All right, so we're going to talk about function notation, and function notation isn't a necessity like in Algebra 1. We're going to start looking at it in Algebra 1. You're going to maybe look at it a little bit in Algebra 2. And I'm not really sure how much math for what degree you want, but if you go into like pre-calc and calculus, that's pretty much all you're going to do is work in function notation. So we're going to kind of start looking at it. Function notation is just a way of saying we know this is a function. So we're going to label it as a function, and we're going to say 4x minus 1. So we're replacing the y with an f of x. So you read it as f of x equals, okay? The f of x is the output of the function, so it's your y, and x is the input, okay? So, for example, if they give you this is the function, and they're asking you to find f of a negative 7, they're asking you to put that in for x. So you're going to say f of a negative 7 equals 4 times a negative 7, and I'm okay if you do that in your head. I was just trying to write it out so you could see. So you get a negative 29. So f of a negative 7 equals a negative 29. You could also write that as a coordinate. So it's just another method of writing a coordinate. Like I was saying a second ago, it's really not imperative for us in Algebra 1, but we are dealing with it, and it is one of the standards that you have to do. Okay, so on this one, they're asking me to put 5 in here, and I literally think I can do that in my head. F of 5 equals 12, right? You're done. Okay, and so on the next one, a little bit harder. You're putting 3 in for x. So you're saying g of a negative 3 equals a negative 9 minus 8, so equals a negative 17. And I'm okay if you just leave it like that. Okay, so I would like you to pause the video, and I would like you to do these. Oh, no. There's a thousands of dollar mistake in one of these. Okay, I would like you to do just those two. Pause the video and just do 3 and 4. There's something yucky coming up. All right, so on this one, I'm putting 9 in here. So h of 9 equals 2/3 times 9 minus 1. Well, 2/3, so that's 9 over 1, that's 18/3. So that's 6 minus 1, so my answer is 5, right? And then on the next one, this one is a huge error for kids. I got 2 places. So I'm going to put it in with parentheses. So f of a negative 4 equals a negative 4 squared minus a negative 4. Now, if you type that into your calculator without parentheses, it will give you the wrong answer. So you've got to be smarter than your calculator. Okay? You have to either put it in parentheses, or you have to remember that when you square a negative number, a negative 4 times a negative 4 is a positive 16. But if you type it in your calculator without the parentheses, a negative 4 squared without parentheses, it's going to tell you a negative 16, but that's wrong. So order of operations, whenever you put a negative number in, you need to put it in parentheses. Okay, and so a negative and negative is a plus. So the answer to this one was actually 20. These can be really confusing, so you've got to be careful. Okay, the reason why I did not want you to do the next one is because of this stupid negative sign right there. Order of operations, you square before you take the negative. Okay, so when I put in 5, I'm squaring before I take the negative. It is such a common error that kids make. It literally, I'm not kidding right now, makes me cry tears. Because when you learn, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, exponents come first. So they want you to square 5, and then you're going to take the negative of it. So this one is different than 4 because you're not putting in a negative number. You're putting in a positive, and you're squaring it and then taking the negative of it. So that's 5. So your answer on this is 1. All right. So with that being said, now I want you to do 6, 7, and 8. Pause and do 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so I'm putting in So I'm doing g of a negative 8. So I'm doing a negative 1/2 times a negative 8 plus 9. Well, half of 8 is 4, but a negative, that's a positive. So my answer is 13. Okay. On the next one, you're squaring a negative 5 first. 4 times negative 5 minus 9. So that's a positive 25 times 50. I'm going to do that all at once. Positive 25 times 2 is 50. And then minus 20 minus 9. So your answer on this was 21. Okay, so absolute value, negative 7 minus, what's a negative 7 squared is a positive 49. So inside of here, this is a negative 56, but then you're taking the absolute value, so your answer is 56. Okay. All right. So now we're going to move on to some more difficult ones. So now this is not asking to put in a number. You're not going to get a number for an answer. You're going to get something with a C in it. So you're getting C plus 7 plus 11. So we did these in a past unit. So I'm going to times in by 4. So I get 4C plus 28 plus 11. So my answer is just 4C plus 39. You can't do anything else with this question. Okay. And I know right now it seems like, why in the heck are we doing this? But the thing is that you will use this math as you move along. Okay, I'm going to have you do the next one, but before you do, I want to just remind you, I would put a 1 there. Okay, you're multiplying in by a negative 1. So pause and do 10 and see if you can get the right answer. So I'm doing a negative 9 minus 1 times 2k minus 5. So the first thing I'm going to do is multiply in by a negative 1. And so my answer is a negative 2k minus 4. Okay, now this next ones, these are kind of getting into algebra 2. But since you're in an honors class, like we're going to move and we're going to try these. Okay, so if you look along the side, sorry, I just like looking at different colors. It's just kind of a weird thing that I do that kids make fun of me for. These are the equations. Okay, so on this first one, they're wanting me to find f of 4. But then once you find f of 4 outside of it, they're wanting me to add 9. Okay, so the first thing that I would do, I would find f of 4 first. So I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to put it into f. So that is 8 minus 36, right? Oh, it's a 4. I multiplied it. I am so sorry. You're putting 4 in? Jeez Louise. So you're putting 4 in, right? So that's 8 minus 12. So that answer is a negative 4. Okay, but then I've got to deal with the plus 9. So I'm adding 9 to it. So my answer, that yellow is terrible. So my answer is 5. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the next one. And I'll try to use better colors. So they're wanting you to find g of a negative 5. So I used purple because it matches. Then when I'm done with it, I'm going to times by the negative 2. Okay, but I got to do one thing at a time. So I'm going to do g of a negative 5. So that's a negative 5 squared plus 2 times a negative 5. Negative 5 squared is 25 plus a negative 10. So my answer is 15. Okay, but now I've got to deal with the fact that they want me to multiply by a negative 2. So my answer is a negative 30. Okay, so I would like you to pause the video and do 13 and 14. Okay, please do not try 15. That's a little bit different. So just try 13 and 14. Okay, so they want me to find g of 4, and they want me to find g of a negative 1, and then when I get those two answers, they want me to add them together. So if I do g of 4, I'm going to do some of this in my head if that's okay. 4 squared, isn't that 16? 4 times 2 is 8, so isn't this 24, right? And then if I do g of a negative 1 squared is 1. 2 times a negative 1 is a negative 2, so it's a negative 1. So my answer is 23. Okay. Then on that last one, they want me to find h of 2, order of operations. They want me to times it by 3. And then they want me to do f of a negative 9. And then they want me to subtract those things. So one thing at a time. I'm going to do h of 2. So h of 2 is a negative 5 halves times 2 minus 1. So that's a negative 10 halves. So it's a negative 5 minus 1. That's a negative 6. But I've got to times that by 3. So that's a negative 18, right? Now I'm going to do a negative 9. So that's going to be 8. Negative 9 times a negative 3 is a plus 27. So I'm minusing, I can't do math right now. Is that 35? Yeah, it is. So I'm minusing 35. So my answer is a negative 53. Okay, these get complicated, and they will in the honors classes. Okay, so number 15 is a completely different question. So if you're bored with this, snap out of it, slap yourself in the face a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to mark this. They're telling you f of x, they're telling you f of x is equal to a negative 13. They're not telling you what to put in for x. They're telling you to equal it to a negative 13. And they want you to find x. Well, why wouldn't I solve this? So I'd minus 8 and divide by negative 3. So they must have put in 7 to get a negative 13 for an answer. Okay, I would like you to pause the video and I would like you to try 16. Okay, so on this one, this is different. They're saying h of x is 39. So they're saying put 39 in for h of x. And they want you to find x. So I would add 1. And I'd get 40 equals negative 5 halves x. When it's a fraction, you can multiply by the reciprocal. So negative 2/5 times by negative 2/5. So if I times by negative 2/5, that's a negative 85th. So my answer is a negative 16. So they must have put a negative 16 in to get 39 for an answer. All right, so anthropologists use the length of a certain bone on a human skeleton to estimate the height of a living person. One of these bones is the femur. To estimate the height in centimeters of a female with a femur length of x is this equation, okay? Find 46. So they know the femur is 46. So I would do 61.41 plus 2.32 times 46. So I know that to explain its meaning, I know that the femur must be 46 because that's what I'm putting in, 46 centimeters. So then when I do this math, 61.41 plus 106.72, my answer is 168.13. Okay, so that means that if a female, so you got to explain it, with a femur length of 46 centimeters is 168.13 centimeters tall. Okay, that's her height. All right, the last one. Kids make these ones so hard, and it's really not hard. Okay, so, but it's math, so it kind of is. And I know what I'm doing, so that's not really fair to say. Isn't this your x? So if I look at the x, I'm saying that I'm looking where x is a negative 3 on this graph. So if I go to a negative 3 and I go right there, isn't isn't y 2 where x is a negative 3? So my answer is 2. Okay, so same thing. Let's try this one more time, a couple more times, because once you get it, you're like, oh, it's not that bad. So I'm saying that I'm looking for an x value of 0. So if I follow my graph to 0, it's right here. My x is 0 and my y is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and so the next one is looking for a graph of 1. So if I go to 1 and I follow the graph 1, I go over here, I go up, isn't it right there at 2? So my answer is 2. And now the next one is looking for a graph where it is 2. So I go to 2 and I go down here and it's a -3. Okay, so you're just finding those points on the graph. Oops, I forgot to put 5 in there. All right, what I would like you to do is pause the video and I would like you to answer the number 19. So when I put a -4 in, 1, 2, 3, 4, I go up to the graph, my answer is 2. Okay, when I put 2 in, I go over to 2, my answer is a -2. Okay, when I put 0 in, I'm at 0, my answer is 0. And when I put 5 in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm at a -1. So these are working with functions.